this on. Hey! Welcome to Tell Us Something. This presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to Tell Us Something by MCAT. We acknowledge with deep respect and gratitude that we are on the ancestral lands of the Pendle, Salish, and Kootenai peoples. They have stewarded this land for countless generations, and their profound connection to the earth and its resources has left an indelible mark on the landscape. In recognizing their enduring legacy, we are called to be steadfast stewards of this land, nurturing its diversity, preserving its ecosystems, and upholding the principles of environmental sustainability. May we honor the wisdom of our ancestors and embrace our responsibility to protect and preserve this precious land for future generations, fostering a harmonious coexistence with nature that celebrates our shared heritage. We take this moment to honor the land and its native peoples and the stories that they share with us. Thank you to our stewardship sponsor, the University of Montana Summer Office. The UM Summer Office provides a unique, top-tier academic summer experience where students can get ahead, catch up, and stay on track. Whether you're a new member of the campus community, a high school student looking for infinite possibilities, or already a part of the Grizz family, UM Summer has an opportunity for you. Visit umt.edu/summer to learn more and browse course offerings and experiential learning opportunities. Thank you to our story sponsors, Access Physical Therapy and Hindu Hillbilly. Thank you to our accessibility sponsor, Blackfoot Communications. When you patronize these businesses, thank them for their support of live storytelling in Missoula. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I know that you have many opportunities of how to spend your time and money, and I'm grateful that you have chosen to be here now. Please note that Tell Us Something sometimes has adult themes, and storytellers sometimes use adult language. So I see a lot of new faces, and welcome. I'm really grateful that you're here. Some of you have maybe never been in the stadium before, so there is a bar all the way down at the end. There's by that white tent past the fun zone. Restrooms are here and here, right up there. And on either side of the restrooms are where you can fill your water bottles as well. So that's the, and this walkway back here is, if you could try to minimize using that walkway, that would be great. No re-entry. If you are going to smoke, there's a little smoking area. You can come back in and do that. We tonight have 8 storytellers. They each have 10 minutes to share their true personal story from memory on the theme of neighbors. We recruit storytellers from the community. Tell Us Something is by the community for the community. And we don't announce who the storytellers are ahead of time because we want you to come and listen to each other and not some specific individual, for example. We have a lot of privilege here at Tell Us Something, and we want to use our privilege to elevate marginalized voices. So welcome. Usually I just keep going with the program, but last night at the Pride ball game, there was a miscommunication, a text miscommunication, and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but I just found out about it. Jason, the baseball player, tell me his name, buddy. Jason Newman, sorry. I lost my notes. Jason Newman, one of the best baseball players on the Paddleheads. I almost used the old name. His wife and daughter decorated his cleats last night, and I have them. I'm going to go grab them in a minute. And we sold raffle tickets for them, and so I'm going to pull a raffle ticket to get those cleats given away. And the raffle benefits Missoula Pride and Tell Us Something. So let me go grab those. Look at these things. Gold on the bottom. I mean, these are awesome. So here's what you need to know about Jason Newman. He was the most valuable player of the Pioneer League, and he announced, in his first season with the Paddleheads, he led the PPL with 32 home runs, which set a short season record. He has 115 runs batted in, which also led the league, and he's a native of California who led all qualified hitters in slugging percentage while pacing the league with 53 extra base hits. And he's racked up 6 saves on the ground. Here are his cleats, and I'm going to pull the raffle ticket to give them away. Win or not need to be present to win.
Thank you.
It looks like Tammy Sellers. Can't read her handwriting, but I can read her phone number, so that's good news for her. Congratulations, Tammy. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. When you arrived, you were provided with an opportunity to share your own neighbor's story anonymously. If you wish to participate, write down your story on the sheet that you were given and place it in the, there's a brown box that looks a lot like that one, at the merch table. And then at intermission, some of those stories will be selected to be read here on the microphone. It is important to actively listen to one another, join together, and support one another by sharing stories. When we do this, we can better connect with our own individual stories, with each other, and with our community. At every event, I say that this is your community and these are your stories. The stories that you hear at each Tell Us Something are by and for members of our community, like I said. You can do this too. The next storytelling event is September 28th. It'll be at the Denison Theater, and we're looking for storytellers. You can go to tellussomething.org and click Tell a Story, and you'll get all the details of how to pitch your story. The theme is Lost in Translation. Pretty awesome. Our storytellers tonight have worked really hard to bring you their stories, and I'm hoping that we can get agreement that we're all going to give them the respect that they deserve. Yeah? Awesome. Thank you. If you have cell phones that are not silenced, now's the time to silence them. You came to listen. Let the listening begin. Thank you for your support of each other and each other's stories. Tell Us Something believes that everyone has a story and everyone's stories matter. I was talking a little bit ago about the privilege that Tell Us Something has, and I would be remiss to actually continue running the mic myself. I'm going to hand the mic over to Kira Rivera. She's going to take over along with Devin tonight. Come on. Come on.
Hello, everyone. So our first storyteller tonight is Katie Condon. Katie, if you want to make your way down to home base, please. Katie is a humanitarian at heart. She believes in the connection of all things. Katie is a lover of art and the simple beauty things this life has to offer. Please welcome Katie Condon.
I met Fran in January of 2007. She had short, stubby legs, dark brown eyes, the most expressive face, one black fingernail. and this band of black in her hair. It looked like she was always wearing a headband. Long, velvety ears that dragged on the ground when her nose caught a scent. She was the perfect representation of the Basset Hound breed, which is why I was confused to find her at the pound. She was a year old. She'd been adopted and returned 3 times. And after 14 years with Fran, I considered returning her myself sometimes. Fran was notoriously naughty. You couldn't keep her tied up. I tried once outside of Bernice's bakery, right across the bridge there. She wiggled out of her collar and found her way into the kitchen, and it was like a scene out of a cartoon, like cookie sheets flying and Parker House rolls rolling and my wily hound dog and 7 different people chasing after her. I was mortified. Fran made quite a reputation for herself among my community and beyond. So when I got the opportunity to go on a nationwide tour with my band, I knew I needed to find somebody specific to watch Fran. I'd heard through the grapevine that my old friend Leela was looking for some short-term housing. I gave her a call. Our dates matched. And she knew Fran well enough, so she took on the challenge. And I left with my band called Letter B. Thank you. I was in this band with my little brother, Jordan Lane, and we just had the best time. From here all the way to Maine, down through the Carolinas, over to LA, up to Seattle, and back home over the course of 6 weeks. It was nuts. It was chaos. It was pure joy. A few weeks into the tour, I get a call from Leila, and she says, every day when I leave for work, Fran is inside. And every day when I come home from work, Fran is outside. I think I had just had a gas station hot dog for breakfast. I was probably hungover. My mind was spinning, and I certainly couldn't troubleshoot what my hound dog was doing 1,000 miles away. And I considered at this point in Fran's life, she had been to 8 rainbow gatherings. And I thought, you know, Fran's pretty savvy. If she's home when you get home, I think it's okay. So I get home from tour a few weeks later, and we're having a neighborhood barbecue. And Fran's checking in with me every once in a while. I had to honor the fact that Fran's first priority was her nose, and I just pined to be her second priority. An older gentleman who lived down the road came up to me and he said, "Is that your dog?" Fran, being Fran, I said, "Why?" And he said, "That dog's been coming down to my shop every day this summer." I'm like, okay, so I'm about to apologize for something. I'm not sure what yet, but... And then he says, "I think she likes the cool floors. It's been a hot summer." Yeah, so then I'm like, I gotta defend myself. I gotta keep my house cooler. He doesn't think I could take good enough care of her or something. And then he says, "She doesn't like it when I use the table saw. So I don't use it when she's around." Okay. Then he says, "My wife gives her bologna. I hope that's okay." yeah, that's fine. And things are starting to come together in my head, and I'm realizing this is where Fran's been going when Leila goes to work and when I was on tour. And then I figured out some things in the house. She was busting into a bedroom. The door would quickly close behind her. And then she would jump up onto a chair, jump up onto a desk, and jump out the window and run down the road to the shop that we lovingly nicknamed the Baloney House. I tried to keep better track of her. I was kind of jealous, and I didn't think it was safe. So I tried to build a fence, and that didn't work. And I bought bologna. That didn't work. I got to know the folks down at the Baloney House because I was consistently going down there retrieving Fran. And sometimes I would walk into the shop, and Doug would be fixing something, anything. And some days I'd walk in there and he'd be building a birdhouse. And some days I would walk in there and he would be painting illustrations of birds for the freaking Audubon Society. Like, no wonder Fran loved him. One day Fran and I are standing at the end of our driveway and we see Doug's truck coming down the road, this big white pickup truck with a ladder on the back. And he stops, leans over, opens the passenger side door, and Fran runs over, jumps in, and they take off down the road. And I chase after him. Wait a second. And he stops. And I open the door and I get my dog out of the truck. He says, Judy went to McDonald's. She got Egg McMuffins. She got Fran one too. That checks out. What am I going to say? No? And don't come at me with, you shouldn't let your dog eat Egg McMuffins, because that dog had a stomach of steel. It was sewn into place, and we only had to pump it twice in her life. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Enjoy your breakfast with Fran. And Doug gets this like mischievous grin on his old man face. And he looks over at my dog and he says, "Let's go, Franny." And he takes off and Fran's chasing his truck down the road. Those little legs are going. Those ears are flapping. It's her version of a sprint. And I'm standing there literally in their dust and I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated and I'm also filled with joy. And I'm frustrated because this is not something that I was expecting to happen. This isn't what normally happens. I've been spending Fran's entire life protecting her from neighbors or protecting neighbors from her. And this situation was something I didn't understand, and that made me feel frustrated. And the joy was seeing Doug become a child and my old hound dog become a puppy. And when they raced down the road, I thought, this is a dog's life. This is loyalty and compassion and playfulness. These are the values that I revere as a dog owner. And then I realized these are the values of great neighbors. Doug and Judy are here today. And I just want to thank you guys for being so kind to Fran, to me, and to my family. I learned many lessons from Fran over the years, but I'll leave you with this one tonight. Love thy neighbor, especially if they have baloney.
Thank you very much, Katie. Our next storyteller is Reid Reimers. Reid was born and raised in Missoula and has a master's in theater from the University of Montana. You've probably seen him hosting numerous events around town, running trivia nights, or strutting his stuff on the stage in local theater productions, including Rocky Horror Live. He has a deep love for other cultures and climes, which has taken him to almost 50 different countries. Because he travels on a tight budget, he has to get creative on those trips, which often leads to unexpected adventures. He also teaches theater to local kiddos, tends to his plethora of houseplants, and recently became a puppy papa to an adorable sociopath named Dewey. Please welcome Reid Reimers.
Yes, as mentioned, I do love to travel. I became obsessed after a 6-week trip to New Zealand turned into almost a year. I'd lived in a van. I was an illegal transient worker on a vineyard. I ended up with white boy dreadlocks because when I had hair, it was quite curly. Not culturally appropriative, I just want to be clear. But my favorite time to travel is actually during February. February in Missoula in particular always feels like a wake to me. Everybody walks around and just kind of nods at each other like, yeah, we're all going through it, man. We're all here. That little half wry smile at the grocery store is just horribly depressing. And so 2 very good friends of mine, Craig and Leah, decided years ago to start what we lovingly and very appropriately call Fuck You February. And so we tried to travel for a couple months, leaving mid-January, getting back mid-March, and we've been all over the place. And one of those luscious Fuck You February trips took us to northern Vietnam. We arrived in Hanoi at dawn-ish, and I'm sure any of you that have traveled from Montana to somewhere like that, when you step off the plane, it's the thickness of the air. It's not just the humidity, it's not a temperature thing, it's the fact that you're near sea level and the air is full of oxygen. So even though you've traveled nightmarishly long to get there, there's something invigorating about it. And that's what we found as we stepped off the plane in Hanoi early that morning. We knew it would be a dangerous mistake to try to sleep even though we were exhausted. And so we decided to stay up, get into the cycle of time, and ran around Hanoi, which is a beautiful city built by French colonialists and now lived in by proper Vietnamese people. The wide boulevards meant to be strut along and see and be seen became shops and restaurants, and you walk in the damn street because you'll figure it out. It's fine. It all works for them, and I really loved being there. At the end of our first night, as we got there, we had asked around, like, what should we do? We want to go get a little rowdy. We need to get a little messed up so we can get some sleep and start this cycle appropriately. And the answer from everyone was Be Ahoy, the Be Ahoy corner. Be Ahoy is a low-octane, quick-brewed beer that doesn't have a long shelf life, so you kind of have to just chug it down. Because of its quick process, it's also quite affordable. So a single cup of Be Ahoy was about 20 US cents, and you could buy an entire pitcher for $1. She knows, you know, yeah. And Be Ahoy Corner, again, this built in the beautiful French style where 3 different streets come together, is just a miasma of tiny plastic chairs and plastic stools and a bunch of people getting really sloppy on very, very cheap beer. There was obviously a language barrier. I knew my please, thank yous, and excuse me's in Vietnamese, but that's about it. But the lovely social lubricant that is alcohol instantly made us a ton of friends, and the fact we didn't mind dropping $1.50 to buy a pitcher for the table next to us. So soon we were surrounded by all sorts of lovely folks, some students trying to practice their English, some locals that we couldn't talk to at all, but as a teacher of mime, I'm really good, especially after a few beers, about explaining what I'm doing with frantic, throbbing hand gestures. There may have been a couple beers spilled, but it worked out just fine. And as we were sitting there, though, this tall white man, one of the only tall white boys we see, whenever we travel, we're like, tall white guy. We point him out because they're not as common as you might think in a lot of places. This guy comes up to us, and he's like, asked me the weirdest question I'd ever imagined. He was like, excuse me, are you from Montana? And we were like, yeah. And he was like, I grew up in Bozeman. Apparently, the fact that we had dove in with both feet and were just chatting and gabbing with people openly had first caught his attention. Then he heard our accent and he was like, that's definitely Western, but Northern Western. We do say bag, you know? Like, he caught it all. And then my buddy, actually, I figured out later, had he runs a fly fishing shop in Divide, and he was wearing his hat. So the guy was like, there he goes. This lovely guy from Bozeman said, we sat and had a couple drinks. He was like, hey, you got to meet my friend Ty. Ty was a local guy. He ran motorcycle tours up around the northern part of Vietnam. It was just an absolute treat. And so he was like, you got to meet Ty. Come on over. And after that much be ahoy, things are a little fuzzy at this point. You'll start going to see a pattern about this whole story. Things get a little fuzzy after a while. But we went to Ty's place. He was a consummate host. His English wasn't super strong, but he was super excited to practice it. And that made us excited as well. And we're sitting there, and my friends are talking about fishing because they're fly fishing guides, and that's all they talk about 90% of the time. And he was like, I'd love to take you fishing at this place that I know, but unfortunately tomorrow I have to go to a wedding, so I can't take you guys. And I jokingly and a little drunkenly was like, oh, we're not good enough to get invited to your wedding? The entire mood shifts. He stops everything, stares at me, and he's like, would you go? You have to tell me now. If you want to go, you can go, but you have to tell me now, and you have to promise to go. And we look at each other after this crazy night. We hadn't even been there for that, in the country for less than a day. And we're like, I think, yeah, right? You don't get that kind of invite every day. And so the next morning at 6:30 a.m. found us dressed in our finest clothes. My buddy Craig is a Patagucci boy. So he had his fishing shirt and his fishing pants, kind of nice. I'm not. So I had this scrubby like sun shirt I brought along and like cargo pants. Listen, I still support cargo shorts, but we all know cargo pants. And Leah, of course, that lucky duck, had one of those tube dresses that can be like a hat or can be a scarf, or she can just pull it over her luscious little blonde body and look absolutely fabulous, wrinkle-free. And I was like, you bitch. So we're standing out there on the sidewalk. Ty pulls up with his wife and his lovely little kiddo, and we hop in a car and head out to this wedding. And again, as we travel through, you kind of see the old colonial built, the French colonial built Hanoi, slowly kind of break down into humbler structures, kind of hand built, cinder blocks and corrugated metal that eventually gives way to just emptiness of rice paddies. It was during a winter planting there, I assume. So there was kind of green about, but it's mostly just kind of marshes as you're driving down the road. About an hour later, we take a random right turn onto an elevated road through the paddies, heading toward this elevated part of land that had some houses and some trees poking up, just kind of rising above all of the paddies. And as we pull up, Ty, in his best broken English, described that Vietnamese weddings last for 6 days sometimes. And we were there on day 4. The groom's family and the bride's family have still not gotten together, so it's just been the groom's family for 3 days straight. And they are bored as all hell. So we pull up to this much larger house than I expected. It's a multi-generational house, probably 15 to 20 people lived there. Big house, all white tile on the inside and the outside. And we go in, and Ty explains that as special guests, it was expected that we would take a shot of their kind of family-made rice whiskey with the patriarch of the family. Great. I don't turn down shots, even though it's like 9:30 in the morning. I don't mind. What we didn't quite realize was that at a wedding, especially on the groom's side, every male over the age of 25 considers himself a patriarch of the family. So instead of taking one shot with everybody, we end up having a line of over 20 people waiting to come individually take shots with us as a welcome to their place. Now, Ty's wife was pouring for us, and they happened to store their homemade hooch in reused plastic bottles. And so she was usually giving us a shot, but every so often she was sneaking in water on ours. Because I don't know if you've ever taken 20 shots of homemade hooch before 10 a.m. on a head full of jet lag and general cultural confusion. Listen, I can handle myself, but that was a lot. And from then on, I started being kind of nervous. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be a sloppy jalopy up here. Like, I don't wanna break any cultural norms. I don't even know what the hell we're supposed to do here. Everyone there was so excited and so inviting though, and they ended up getting shit canned right along with us to the point that it just didn't matter. And from that moment, after our 20 pre-10 a.m. shots, everything again gets a little loopy-jaloopy. But I do remember we snuck out with some of the kids to the pomelo grove next door, and we're stealing pomelos. They're like big grapefruits. The lady came out screaming at us, and then she saw that there was like 3 random white people in her yard. It was like, oh, you must be here for the wedding. She gave us a crate of pomelos to take back. There was some really loud, terrible karaoke going on. I sang Obla Di, Obla Da, which they didn't recognize at all, but they found quite impressive. There was huge trays of food that came out. My buddy Craig is allergic to peanuts, and usually he can kind of smell it and he's okay, but he bit into a bun and instantly stopped, set it down and ran outside to go spit it out, and he brought a whole jug of whiskey with him to rinse his mouth with. Well, little did he realize as he looked up when he was done, he was right outside where all the grandmas had been preparing all the food, and he was there like seemingly puking it up out of a nightmare. We got that explained. It was fine, but it was very, very awkward. At one point, Ty had brought his dad's guitar, which hadn't been played since the Vietnam War because none of his family knew how to play. Craig knew how to pick a few things. And so they invited us up to sing a song. And I was like, Craig, what songs do you know? He's like, not many. He's like, what songs do you know? I was like, nothing you can play. So we decided on Wagon Wheel, which I knew almost none of the lyrics to. And I turned to him and I was like, man, I don't know the verse. I know the chorus. Everybody knows the chorus. I don't know the verses. And he was like, they don't speak English. Nobody cares. So it turned into kind of like a heading down south to the watermelon place, and we're going to grab something for a face to say, hey, Rama me. Entire family gets so excited. At some point, we need to go out to this temple that's nearby. They were preparing for the Lunar New Year. And so we hop on scooters. Craig jumps on a scooter, guns it, instantly shoots out from under him, and goes off the edge of the cliff into the rice paddies, which was only met by like, oh, stupid drunk guy, ha, 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 ha. It was fine. They knew how to do it. They totally back up. I hop on one, and let me tell you, as a big awkward asshole, I am much better on 4 wheels than 2. I did pretty well, but as I came around a corner, I skidded out, again, to just cheers and guffaws from everyone. And I was assigned a driver, which was a 9-year-old girl, who was quite capable about running a damn 50cc scooter without any kind of issues. So the story continued. It was an amazing day. We finally got back into Hanoi. We met up with the families there. And after the bride was hiding somewhere and the groom had to go find her in the family's house and take her down, we had a great party. We kind of ended at a fast food chicken joint, and we were walking back. But what hit me as we were walking back home and sobriety started to rear its ugly, nasty head, I just thought so many times when I travel, I feel like an outsider looking in. I feel like a voyeur in some ways. As much as you can be invited into a place, you always feel like you're outside of it. And what I realized is that those folks were just as excited to have us there to get their 4th day celebration going as we felt to be there. And I just think that touched me in a way I actually have trouble putting words to, which I probably should have prepared for because I'm telling you all about it. But I just love, though, as a final thought, that somewhere above someone's mantle is a beautiful, professionally taken photo of all the bride and groom's family and friends dressed in their finest. And randomly in the back is 2 scuzzy backpackers and a gorgeous blonde girl in a goddamn wrap dress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reid, you saucy minx. Pascaline Piquard has been an English teacher in France for 15 years, and she is a Fulbright grantee attending a 5-week program in the U.S. about American history, culture, and politics. She is a lifelong learner, and she loves discovering new things, meeting people, and sharing experiences. Her adventurous spirit and curiosity have brought her to various places such as Jordan, Thailand, China, Italy, the UK, and Ireland, Peru, Canada, and the US. Please welcome Piquard. Pascaline Piquard.
Wow, very impressive. Bonsoir. All right, so most of my life I have lived in big houses surrounded with huge gardens, many trees. But once I got divorced, I decided I had to move to a smaller place. So I moved to an apartment with my two sons, Gaspard and Guillaume. And so we settled in this apartment, quite small for us. And in the springtime, we decided that we needed some snack. Around 4 p.m., that's a snack time in France. Yeah, for you guys, sometimes it's just dinner. For us, it's just snack time, and then we have dinner like at 8. But anyway. So I tell my sons, okay, let's go. You know, in the springtime, you have these trees. In France, we call them acacia. And I think in English, it's black locust. And it smells beautiful. It's like this stem with like white flowers on it. And it's as big as grape. It smells delicious and it tastes delicious. And when I arrived here by the end of May, I had tasted some on your trees here in Missoula, and it's so good. So anyway, I tell my son, let's go and let's grab some flowers so that we can make donuts out of them. They love it. And my older son, Gaspard, he said, can we take Elliot, that's his Turkish friend, can we take him because I don't think he knows about these donuts. So I say, okay, let's go. So off we go, and I don't know about you, but me living with two boys, at that time they were 7 and 9 years old, always used to be in big houses, big gardens, and they were stuck in my apartment, so they were getting hectic, kind of. So I needed them to do some exercise and to practice, like just go and do some sport. So off we go, and I make sure that actually the walk will be very long, so that then when I need them to go to bed, I'm sure I'll be on my own then. So we go and we walk and we take loops and loops and loops and loops. And the younger one, Guillaume, said, Maman, please, can we just go straight to the trees? Like we can smell them. Can we just go straight to the point? And then I was like, no, that's not good, that's not good. Just 1 more, 2 more loops. So we keep walking. And finally, I decide after an hour that maybe time is off, like we should just get the flowers. But they are small. And the trees, these acacia trees, the black locust trees, they are very, very tall, very thin, very hardwood. So I tell them to climb it, but they have to climb like 15 feet. So I take them and I put them on the tree, and they grab the branches, and then they pick the flowers, and they toss them on my head, of course, and then I pile them on my wicker. It's a big wicker, like very big one. And maybe it takes like 15, 20 minutes, and we have so many of them. So I said, okay, guys, just come down. And I could tell, like, looking at Elliot, my son's friend, looking at his face, he was like watering. You know, just imagine these flowers. If you were a bee, I think that would be the paradise for the bees, because they smell so good. And you just want to have all of them just for you. So we go back home, 10 minutes, the walk back. And we get home, it's about 5:30, 6, something like that. And we start to prepare the dough. And then we dip the flowers. It smells so good. And then once it's fried, we put it on a plate. And as As I was piling them up, I could see the plate going bigger, 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 because maybe we had like 40 flowers, so it's kind of a lot for just 4 people. And my sons are like, oh, Maman, please, can we try one? No, guys, wait for me to finish it, because otherwise, once I'm done with the cooking, there won't be any left for me. I know you. So, yeah, and it's true. I have to help myself first, otherwise I don't eat. So we have these huge plates, and they are so eager to eat. And then I remember, oh, Madame Mani, she's my 1 floor down neighbor, and she had told me the very morning that her son-in-law had just died. And I could feel that she was very emotional, very sad about this. So before we started eating the flour donuts, I told my sons, okay, guys, you know what? You know, Madame Mani, she just lost her son-in-law. So what about you go down and you give her, like you offer her the plate and then she can take some. But please don't give it to her like 1 flower after another, because this is not polite, right? So you just show the plate and she'll take whatever she wants. Okay, Mommy, let's go. So the 3 boys go down 1 floor and I start cleaning the kitchen. 2 minutes later, not even, they come back. They ring at the door. I open the door and I don't know, like they look at me and I can feel something is wrong, but I don't know what. And they are half laughing, half crying, like I know that they don't know how they should feel. So I ask them, okay, so where is the plate? Okay, Mom. The thing is, we rang at the door, and Madame Mani opened the door, and we told her that she could have some of the donuts. Yeah, good. And, okay, the thing is, she took the plate, put it in the kitchen, she went back to the door and said, thank you, guys, you are so lovely. And she closed the door on us. And so I said, but did you say that she could have some? Yes, Mom, but what I was supposed to do, like ask her the plate back and just give it 2? You told her she could take whatever she wanted, and I guess the 40 donuts was good enough for her. But you know, Madame Mani, she's maybe 85 years old. So I don't know, but 40 donuts, when you're sad, it's a lot, right? Even if you are not sad, actually. But anyway. So I look at my sons, it's 7 p.m., no snack, dinner is coming on, but I have nothing prepared because I was counting on these donuts. And my boys are still expecting to have some donuts. So I guess we have to go back to the forest. And surprisingly, it was just 10 minutes long. So we go back to the forest, but we had already picked all the easier flowers, so we had to go to the further one, so they have to climb again. And at some point I said, you know what, we don't need 41, like we don't need 40, just get maybe 15 to 20, that's fine. So we get the 20 flowers, we go back, we hurry, I make the dough again, I dip the flour again in the dough and I fry them and we eat them, but we're just so tired, like it's 8 p.m., man, and is that a dinner? But anyway, we loved it. Elliot loved it. He had never eaten fried flowers before, and you should try. I will give Mark the recipe, so. And still, you know, we have eaten maybe 20 donuts. We were the 4 of us, and that was a lot. We were like, ugh. So we go to bed, still wondering how was Madame Mani doing. Because, you know, she's 85 something, quite fit. She always tells me about her vegetables and the fruits she loves to eat. So I don't see how the donuts and the vegetables fit together, but anyway. And the following morning, I wake up wondering if I had missed the ambulance or just to take care of her, you know. And then suddenly I see her in the staircase going to the market because it's Saturday morning and I also go to the market. That's usually where we chat. So she sees me and I'm like, oh, bonjour, Madame Mani, with a smile that says more than what I could say. And she's like, oh, Pascaline, thank you so much for the donuts. You know, I just love them. Oh, so she ate all of them. You know, I had my son on the phone and I told him how lucky I was to have you as a neighbor, that you are so thoughtful. And they were so good. It was my first time. Thank you so much. Then I realized she had eaten the 40 donuts. And she wasn't even sick. So she had a very strong stomach, I guess. And you know what? The thing is, that was 6 years ago, and she's still my neighbor. I am still her neighbor, and I'm here for 2 months and a half, and she's taking care of my plants back home. I hope she's not eating them. But now, every time I cook something, because I like to give, my building is mainly full of widows, and so I'm by myself with them. So whenever I cook a cake for my sons, I keep some for them, but then my son always tells me, okay, Mom, remember, first you give us some, and you make sure it's just one size, one person size of the cake. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascaline. Our next storyteller is Kaegan Bonstein. Kaegan is a lifelong performer excited to take a hand at storytelling tonight. He has 25 years of performance experience, ranging from musicals to environmental theater to political demonstration. He is also a lifelong food service worker and energy practitioner. He's very grateful to call Missoula home and for this opportunity. Please welcome Kaegan Bonstein.
Out of the head and into the heart. I've been in transition for about a year now. Been on hormones for the last 6 months, and it has been a very revelatory experience. Just, thank you. A lot of things, thank you. Just a lot of things coming up, and it becomes something where you just have time to look at all the things that you want to braid together about this part that hasn't been expressed. And one of the things I was thinking about is the short king. Like, I want to be a short king, which is somebody of short stature that exudes confidence. I'm like, all right, that's aspirational. Let's go for that. And so while I'm going through this process, I'm realizing, you know, I haven't been out of town. Like, it had been since COVID. I hadn't left or anything like that. So I'm like, I need something to, like, break up the rhythm a little bit and shake up the gumball machine. And my friend, like, about a year ago was like, why don't you go to Hawaii? And I was like, okay, I mean, you know, there's so many places to go. And then I just kind of put that away. And then it starts showing up on people's T-shirts and it's coming up in conversation. I'm like, all right, universe, I hear you. And so I book a ticket and go off to Honolulu and land in Oahu. And I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but when you land there, at least to me, the land is so vocal. You can feel it. And so I immediately went up to the north shore of Oahu, which is like the center of surf culture, and it was at the end of the surf season. It was mid-April, and so there's a lot of people there doing that, and I'm just kind of taking things in, and I end up in this little area called Pupukea. And in Pupukea is a beach called Three Tables, and it was awesome. It was this tiny little beach with 2 alcoves, one on either side, and one side has sand on it with some trees in the background, and then it slowly turns into like coral drop-off and like cliffside. And so I spent some time there, and like that's where I ended up spending most of my time. I thought I was going to island hop and everything, but I wound up staying put. And as soon as I get there, there's, at Three Tables, why it's called that, there's 3 stone slats out a little bit of ways. And I'm just watching the waves crash, and I'm just like, fuck it. And I dive in, and I'm swimming in this ocean, and I start laughing hysterically. And I'm just diving in and feeling this visceral give and take of the tide. And I grew up on the Atlantic Ocean, and this was a whole other thing. Like, it's very vocal and wild and very clear that this is the biggest ocean on our planet. And when I was out there having this experience, I was like, I don't want to rehearse anymore. I just want to dive in and get going and make each day matter more than I felt I had been at that point. So I stayed in Pupukea. I made some really great friends, jumped off some rocks, and just had an awesome experience staying at a hostel. And then I had prepared to camp there because I brought my tent with me and everything. And so at the end of my time staying at a hostel, a friend of mine, we had gone on this hike and had this very open-hearted conversation, and I was really proud of myself that I had said how I felt. And he drops me off at the other side of Three Tables, which there's a bridge, and then there are these stationary bathrooms there. And he went off to meet another friend. So I have my pack on me, and I see this Hawaiian family, and they've clearly been there for a little while. There was like a tarp cover with a grill, a couple blankets, a lot of folding chairs, and I was kind of like, all right, I'll ask these people while I use the restroom to watch my bag. I didn't really want to bring it in the bathroom. It was huge. So, and I was also, kind of calling their bluff, like, people aren't that nice. I don't know. It was a test. And I went up to them, and these 2 guys were sitting on the side and folding chairs, and I go up to them and I say, excuse me, would you mind watching my bag while I use the restroom? And they go, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And I go in and I use the men's side. And while I'm in the bathroom, I'm like, all right, just play it cool. If anything happens, just play it cool. Because, like, being trans, in my experience, you learn to assess things very quickly, and you got to figure out how to keep yourself safe. And so I go back out, and then I make eye contact with one of the guys, so they definitely see me coming out of the men's side. And then I go to just grab my bag and head on. I'm like, okay, thanks, man. And it's like, whoa. Hey, do you want a beer or something? I was like, yeah, sure, thanks. And he's like, yeah, no problem. What's your name? And so in an act of good faith, I introduced myself by my nickname. Hey, I'm Finn. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Uncle. This is Stan. And I was like, all right. So making a little bit of chit chat, not too much. And I just slowly start to realize they're like inviting me to sit down and enjoy for a while. So I sit down, and I'm sitting down next to them while they're in the chairs, and they're just feeding me beautiful, perfect poke, beer, the biggest blunt I've ever seen. I handled myself like a boss, but it was something. Somewhere out there, Snoop's proud. So, and I'm hanging there, and they're just like letting me be and like making a little bit of talk, but everything's happening, like the teenagers are giving flack to the young adults, and like I'm watching Uncle help one of the aunties out with her chair that's not working. Oh, hold on, I'll be right there. Let me help you. And like, they're just lovely hosts. And up walks this guy, and he's like, hey, I'm Brendan. Hey, Brendan, nice to meet you. He's not much taller than me, and he holds himself with pride. Yeah. And we're just having this conversation, and he's just gently, but like with some authority, advising me on how to get my shit together. And he's telling me about like all these certificates I can earn and just perspective changes, and it was a really awesome, generous gesture. And at one point, I look off to the side where the sand is in Three Tables, and I see like people on the beach, like surfers going in and out with the tide, people swimming. And on the radio comes One Love. One love, one life. And the waves are perfectly in sync. Boys thinking about life. Yeah. And I realized that these people created space for me to create space for myself. They made it safe to be here now in this moment. Yeah. And I'm just totally blown away by the generosity, and we all sit there and just slowly watch the sunset quietly, music's playing. And as I start to realize it's time to wrap up, I start to get my bag, and then I walk over to the cliffside at the coral edge where there's a bunch of trees. And so the drop-off's right there. 2 trees are crossed right over my head, and right in the middle is the moon. It's a full moon. And I'm just holding my hands there and saying thank you to something I didn't even know I needed. And as I'm leaving, one of the aunties hands me something. She's like, "Here, take this." And it was a loaf of bread of King's Hawaiian. And as I'm walking off, I'm like, "Uncle, thank you so much. I really appreciate it." And he was like, "Hey, man, I'm with you." Yeah. And at the end of it, they just gave me space to be and showed me that there's a strength in that. That you can be a short king and a good king at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaegan. Thank you to our stewardship sponsor, the University of Montana Summer Office. Thank you to our story sponsors, Access Physical Therapy and Hindu Hillbilly. Thank you to our accessibility sponsor, Blackfoot Communications. Thanks to our media sponsors, Missoula Broadcasting Company, including the family of ESPN Radio, The Trail 103.3, Jack FM, and Missoula's source for modern hits, U104.5 FM. Thank you to True Food Missoula, farm-to-table food delivery. You can find them at truefoodcsa.com, but they are taking a break for the summer. Float Missoula, learn more at floatmsla.com and missoulaevents.net. Also the Missoula Art Museum. When you patronize these businesses, thank them for their support of live storytelling in Missoula. We are at the part of the night where we get to take a break, 10-minute intermission. When we come back, audience participation. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back. 10 minutes goes awfully fast, which makes me realize I forgot to tell you one of the pieces that's supposed to happen. There's a 10-minute stopwatch that counts backwards, and the storytellers are supposed to be able to see it so they can check in. And there's supposed to be a little gong that happens at the 9-minute mark. Well, they can't see the iPad because of the sun. That's going to change. So apologize for the ones that went a little long. Thank you to all of our storytellers so far tonight. Thank you to our American Sign Language interpreters, Bonnie Curian and Denise May. And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your love, your open hearts, your patience, your respect, and your very presence. Without you, Tell Us Something cannot happen. Remember that the next event, we're looking for storytellers. The theme is Lost in Translation. Right now, we're at the audience participation part of the evening. My friend Heidi J is here to help me with that. And you're going to go first. Yeah, you got to turn it on. Here you go.
Hola, 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 hola. Buenas noches. How's everybody doing tonight? Wait a second, I thought this was Pride weekend. How is everybody doing tonight? Once, when I was in Brazil, I got lost. It was a dark night, and I was very scared and alone. I saw a small light flicker in the trees and followed it to a small hut. An Afro-Brazilian family lived there, and they invited me in and fed me and let me sleep there. The next day, I got to talk with the woman and play with her children. I rode a crazy school bus back to our international campsite on winding dirt roads. I got off the bus when I arrived, and there were 2 rainbows around the sun. I cried. Thank you. Muito obrigada. Wherever you are, I will never forget you.
It is a bitter, cold winter in Missoula, Montana. House sitting in the lower Rattlesnake for a guy who said he'd be out of cell service. I was surprised when I got a call from him. Everything okay? Yeah, considering the fire department just left my house. The neighbors discovered that the chicken coop was on fire. All of the chickens lived. The chicken coop did not survive. The heat lamp got knocked over and started the straw on fire. Thank God for those neighbors.
We lived in Saipan when I was 12 years old. At our apartment complex, there was always a goat tied up in the grassy area up front. We thought it was so cute. The downstairs neighbors were also the maintenance people for the complex. One day, the downstairs neighbors had a huge fiesta, and the goat was gone.
Aw. When I was at the University of Montana, I went to take a shower and I got locked out of my dorm room. After my shower, I went outside to what I thought was my dorm window and proceeded to open the window. It was the wrong window. He was on the U of M football team, and I was at his window in my towel trying to crawl in. He hollered, "What are you doing?"
Once I moved in across the street from my ex-girlfriend, whom I didn't talk to, by accident, in New York City, and only found out when I ran into her on the subway home and then got splashed fully by a bus directly in front of her on the walk home. Ah, youth.
We live in the mountains and burn slash piles regularly to keep the fuel level down. We often invite friends over to help and then light a bonfire and have a party. Well, we lit a small fire the day before the party and, thinking it was out, left for town. Yeah. Luckily, our neighbors got the date wrong and came to our house that day, not the next day, when the party was scheduled, and saw smoke. Oh no! But they put the smoldering fire out and then had a good story to tell, if embarrassing, the next day at the party.
"4 years ago, I moved in across the valley from a tall, long-haired, gorgeous guy. We first became friends, and then after a few dates, including one to tell us something, we exchanged a magical kiss and fell in love. Tomorrow, we are having our version of a wedding, a love ceremony. And tonight, we are celebrating all forms of love with our community. Let's hear it! Woo!
We should have closed with that one. This is the last one. I grew up in Montana ranch country, a place that still dreamed it was open range until it came to other people's cattle. Then the good fences make good neighbors. We had a neighbor who had a heifer bull that he failed to fence in. My parents raised Angus. After several break-ins from his pasture to ours, my parents saddled up and drove the heifer bull onto our branding corral. He was big, angry, and very male. My brother and I watched as my parents enticed the bull into a squeeze chute. It looked like the animal could escape or twist the chute apart, but it held. My dad then found a big knife, reached in, and slit the bull's testicles. In less than 30 seconds, he was no longer male. The blood was hosed off, the bull released, and driven to the hole in the fence. Our Angus herd stayed Angus. Yeah. Our neighbor never spoke about his non-bull, but he did fix his fence.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you all. Kara, welcome back.
Opening the second half of our evening is Missoula Pride coordinator Devin Carpenter. Devin is a Colorado Tannin, thank you for making me say that, who has lived in Pennsylvania and New York and is joined tonight by his mom, Patty, and his dad, Jeff, who did not know he was telling the story. Growing up on a military base and moving throughout his life has greatly influenced the way Devin sees the world and how he approaches relationships with others. Devin calls Missoula home and has been deeply involved in building communities through activism and social engagement since he arrived here to start college at the University of Montana in 2008. Devin left Montana in 2015 to pursue a master's degree in higher education at Penn State and found his way right back to take on his current role as the Director of New Student Success at UM. In his free time, Devin is likely listening to his record collection, cooking a meal from scratch, drinking a shady at the former Kettle House Southside with his friends, dancing in the dark, or some combination of all four. Please welcome Devin Carpenter.
So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning on a typical Saturday, and 7-year-old me is fast asleep. And into my dreams, I start to hear this sort of subtle yet persistent tap, 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 tap. And as I wake up, I notice that there's a woman standing outside my bedroom, tapping on the window and holding this white bag in the air. And then I get excited because I realize this is not just some woman, this is Mimi, this is my grandma. And what I need to do is go very quietly let her in the house. And so I very carefully creep down the wooden bunk bed so I don't wake up my little brother Austin, who's sleeping below. I sneak past my little brother Zachary's bedroom, past my parents' bedroom, and I go let Mimi in the front door. And we sit down and we open up this white bag and we share a couple glazed donut holes. Just the two of us before we go wake up everyone else and then share with them as well. And this is just one of the many silly little things that my grandmother and I would do together as a kid. I am extremely close to Mimi. You see, I'm the oldest of 7 grandchildren, and so by default, I'm the favorite. As I've gotten older, I've really realized just how profound of an impact Mimi has had on my life and how I choose to show up in the world. And what it really boils down to are 2 lessons. The first is to be a good neighbor. You see, I grew up in the same small town, Lompoc, California, where Vandenberg Air Force Base is, that my mom and her two sisters grew up in. And so Mimi and Papa have lived in the same place for almost 50 years and have really built a community of people around them. Their house sits up kind of on a corner, raised above everyone else's, and as you stand at the kitchen sink, you look out across the lawn that my grandpa xeriscaped over the years and past the hedges where the blue-bellied lizards, you know, the ones that if you try to catch them, their tail rips off, where they would sun in the summertime, and you can see kind of the whole neighborhood out where everything is. And what I noticed over sort of observing my grandmother is just how very small interactions can lead to really meaningful relationships. And things like Mrs. Pickles next door coming over to bring over the Sunday paper because they would share it among all kinds of ladies in the neighborhood so they could get the most coupons because they all use different brands, and so they were maximizing their coupons. Or if it was Mimi sending me across the street to go visit Ruthie because she could see me go all the way across the street, and so I'd go hang out with Ruthie, and she usually had some kind of sweet treat to give me. Or it's my grandmother making jam from her boysenberry bushes and giving it to the other neighbors. And these sorts of small interactions can lead to a type of community where you are sort of forced to rely on other people, but it's a two-way street. You're also providing something to others, and that builds into something larger. The second lesson was to live boldly. And boldness can take shape in many forms. Mimi was diagnosed with cancer in 2008. And as she started to lose her hair, rather than letting that sort of demoralize her, she decided to be silly about it. And so she would hide costumes around the house and would wear them at the most inopportune times. So you'd be sitting at the dinner table, and next thing you know, she'd pull out a pair of Groucho Marx sunglasses with the big nose and the mustache. Or she would wear one of those fur-lined Trapper John hats to church. Or she would bring feather boas to her exercise class so that everyone could wear one and be a little silly. Boldness is also sassy, too. And so one particular time, this was in Colorado, we moved there when I was 10. We're at the commissary on base, and this woman is not using good grocery store etiquette. So Mimi nicknames her the general's wife, because the only person with the audacity to act like that must be the general's wife. And general's wife leaves her cart in the middle of the aisle and wanders away, and so Mimi takes it and hides it a couple aisles in the other direction. And I, mortified, run in the other direction as well. And it's this kind of boldness that I really have taken with me as well. 2008 was a big year for my family. Not only did the cancer happen, but we were also moving to Montana. I was starting college, and my family was being stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base. And so this was really the first time where I was forced with figuring out how I wanted to exist. I was moving out on my own, starting college. It's when I started really exploring my sexuality. It's when I figured out how I wanted to take up space and use my voice for social justice and activism. And I also had to decide what kind of friends I wanted to have and how I wanted to build that community for myself. And so I really found my friends in the music scene here. And the best way that I can explain this is, again, through a series of seemingly small interactions that cascade into larger things. And so it can be as simple as being in the pit at a concert, and you see someone who had one too many mushroom chocolates, and you offer them water, and then you talk to them, and you add them on social media, and then months later you're looking for a ride to go to a mountain party in Billings, and they know someone who's going, and so you hop in the car with these strangers and talk for the next 6 hours as you drive to Billings, and then you spend the weekend surviving at a rave in the forest, and you get to know them through those interactions. And not only is that being a good neighbor, but it's also quite bold to do those kinds of things. And so this really comes to a head for me. In one particular moment, it was a typical Saturday. I was in the alleyway behind the Badlander. And I wasn't, none of my really close friends were there, but people I knew, some of these acquaintances were there. And I noticed that there were these people who were talking about me. They were making fun of the clothes that I was wearing. It's actually, this jacket is what they were talking about. And they were using some not so nice words about how flamboyantly I was dressed. And so I did the thing that Mimi would do, and I yelled back at them. And next thing I know, there's a semicircle of men standing around me, demanding that I apologize to them. And the people around me were encouraging me to apologize. And I will never forget the moment where I consciously decided I would rather get beat up in this alleyway than apologize to these people. And I didn't know it then, but I know now that Mimi was standing behind me saying, "Those are not good neighbors, be bold." And thankfully, two people who I knew a little bit, maybe not super well, Nico and Tiffany, happened to be coming outside, and they were able to get these people to go away. And as luck would have it, we've actually become great friends. Nico has tattooed Mimi's handwriting on my body, and Tiffany, who's here, I just spent the night in the emergency room with her when she broke her collarbone a couple weeks ago. And so we are still very good friends. And I wish that the story ended here, but there was one more lesson that Mimi had to teach me. I mentioned that she was diagnosed with cancer in 2008, and that continued over the years with different kinds and strokes and things. And just this past February, I got the call that I have been dreading for over a decade. And my mom told me that I should get on a plane and I should pack a suit. And so I went with the intention of being there for 2 weeks. My parents from Denver, me from Montana, my Aunt Karen from DC, my Aunt Julie from Northern California, all arrived in that same driveway that we spent our childhood in with the hedges and the lizards within a matter of moments of each other. And 7 hours later, as we were arguing over who was going to stay awake to give Mimi her medicine, she died. And in the chaos that ensued in the days to come, I found myself standing in the kitchen trying to look at anything besides anyone else's face. And so I did the logical thing and just started reading everything that was on the refrigerator. And I came across a magnet that said, "Angels are sometimes disguised as neighbors."
I'm not crying, you're crying. Thank you so much, Devin. Next up is Sarah Black. Sarah grew up in Helena, Montana. After high school, she moved around several times and is happy to reside in Missoula and live closer to family. She is fascinated by wellness, art, the outdoors, social justice, storytelling, and all the ways they intersect. Please welcome Sarah Black.
There's a path that I was supposed to follow. I was supposed to marry a cisgender man. They don't specify cisgendered, but it's just assumed that that's what they're talking about, because there's no other kind, right? I was supposed to have kids, eventually grandkids, and me and this man were supposed to grow old together. I wasn't sure if this was the right path for me. I thought it might be, because I did actually fall in love with and then marry a cisgender man. But I was also queer. It didn't complicate things right away because I didn't know what that looked like for me. I didn't have a lot of role models when I was younger, and the ones that I had, I couldn't really relate to. The best explanation that I have for this is that it's like I was walking down this path, and it's nighttime, and queerness is like a house with the lights on, and I can see the people inside, and I want to go in, but I don't know those people, and I don't live in that house, and the door is closed. And then I met Lewis, and the door opened, and it turns out that I do live there, and I do know those people. So then it got a little complicated because I still loved this man that I married, but I was also falling in love with Lewis. I felt like my marriage was unraveling. I would have kept the both of them if I could, but that wasn't an option. So I had to kind of start letting him go. And I felt like no matter how you told the story, I was the villain. And not like a sexy villain, more like the kind of villain who loses everyone close to them and then proceeds to make terrible life decisions. And I didn't want to be that villain. So I reached out to a friend, the one person that I could think of who had been through something sort of similar, because I thought he might understand. And he did more than understand. He listened to me fret endlessly. And then he said, "Look, you can't do this wrong." I was like, "I can't do this right." He was like, "No, lead with love, and you can't do it wrong." So I came out to a few more friends. That went pretty well. And then I had to come out to my parents. I had to tell them that my marriage was ending, I'm in a new relationship, and I'm bisexual. Like all in the same conversation. Right around Christmas time. Merry Christmas. My mom had a lot of questions. I don't blame her, that's a lot. And I didn't really have all the answers, but I felt like I owed it to her to try. It was a hard conversation. And then my dad, who had been kind of quiet through all this, spoke up and said, "The most important thing is that we love you." So let me just go back real quick and tell you about Lewis and how I met him. We worked at a Starbucks together in New York, and this particular Starbucks, it had a walk-in freezer that was an absolute nightmare. I don't think they make them like this anymore. I really hope they don't make them like this anymore. You open the door, and the first compartment is a refrigerator, and then there's a second door, and you have to go through that to get to the freezer. And there's no other way into this freezer. It butts up against the wall. So every time that door is like hanging open, condensation builds around the door frame so that when you close it, it freezes. And that makes it very difficult to get into the freezer, and it also makes it very difficult to get out of the freezer. So it was just this terrifying exercise. Because we would prop it open, and it would just build up more condensation, and then it would freeze. Some kind soul had left his red soccer warm-up sweatshirt on a hook right outside the freezer for anyone to use whenever they went in there. And I loved that sweatshirt. I felt a connection to the person who owned it even before I knew who it was. And I loved having access to it because I get cold real easy. And that's just kind of who Lewis is. He just provides you with the thing you need before you even know that you need it. So turned out I kind of liked him, he kind of liked me. We eventually did get married. We have an awesome daughter, and we moved back to Montana to be closer to my folks. And then about 10 years into our relationship, he says, I've taken this body as far masculine as I can, and it's not far enough. I need to transition. He gave me permission to tell you this, by the way. Now, as someone who has come out and faced clumsy reactions to it, I would like to tell you that I handled this very gracefully, but I cannot. I loved him, and I knew that it wasn't going to break us up, but I was a little scared about how the hormones would change him. Like, I don't know, he was going to become a big grumpy Hulk monster or something. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. But he did change, but not at all in the ways that I was afraid he would. On the outside, he's a little different, but on the inside, he is exactly the same person he always was, except that now he's a little more comfortable, well, a lot more comfortable in his body and in his life than I have ever known him. And gender congruency has been just, that's where your insides and your outsides match, has just been such a huge relief for him that he now has more capacity for the bullshit of the world and more capacity for the bullshit of his wife, which is good news for me. So I guess I went a little bit off the path that I was supposed to be on, but I wouldn't take it back ever. I mean, once you get to be yourself, it's that you just have so much freedom to keep going. And I don't know where we're going next with this. Hopefully Hawaii. I kind of want to check out 3 tables now. All I know is lead with love, and you can't do it wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Next up, we have Whitney Peper. Baron Whitney Peper is an award-winning architect based in Missoula who helps homeowners create new spaces and transform old ones in a way that welcomes nature, community, and health into our lives. He is also co-facilitating an emerging coalition of community members to support the city in reimagining how we can together address housing affordability, and he would love to talk to you about it. Please welcome Whitney Peper.
It was spring of 2022, just over a year ago, here in Missoula, Montana. It was a cool morning, crisp air, and we had the doors flung open in our house to let that beautiful spring warmth start coming in because our windows are all painted shut. But this was not just any day. This was the sun coming back in a time of celebration, because what had just taken place 6 months prior, leading up to this moment, was a ridiculous home renovation extravaganza, which I took on and told my partner, we got this, which I did not know how to do. And so, over 6 months, we had completely gutted and completely renovated and torn apart this house involving every single person that I met on the street, anywhere. I'm like, want to help? And we're down to the details at this point. So it's really a time of celebration. It had been chaos. And on this day, we were sleeping in, which was really nice. You know, I think we slept in that day. I should back up. The context of my house, I'm living with my partner who grew up here in Missoula, and my partner's mother, whose name is Tracy. My partner is JP. My partner's name, JP's mom is Tracy. And Tracy moved back from Arizona to move to her hometown, Missoula, to move in with us. So this house renovation project involving ex-husbands and family members and cousins and strangers has been a big deal. And Tracy sleeps on the main floor in the small bedroom. It's a very small house. You walk in and it's just one space. There's a little bedroom, and then downstairs there's the basement. That's where JP and I sleep. So this morning we wake up, we're down in the basement. We can hear Tracy getting up in the bedroom above us, going off to the farmer's market or to go grab lunch or something. And we wake up this day and we're down to the details. I'm planning to install smoke detectors, which is really exciting. And we put on music. I think it was the Bahamas, you know, like, dum, 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 is there some weight trick to being happy? Dum, dum, dum. Most days I'm feeling like a half me. It's a blissful morning. And we're out there, you know, JP's cooking us breakfast or something. I'm working smoke detectors, getting my stuff, getting my tools. And I go into Tracy's room, which is on the main floor. JP's, you know, cooking breakfast, and we're grooving. I'm on the stool, and I walk in, though, and I see that there's a Camel cigarette on Tracy's bed. And I think, that's weird. Tracy doesn't smoke. But she is a spiritual woman. And I thought, you know, she's got some native indigenous friends, and I thought, I know that tobacco is something used for ceremony. My mind was just like, cool. I went about my business. Installed the smoke detector. And then I worked my way downstairs, and I'm in our bedroom. I can hear the music. You know, JP's dancing all around. And at some point, Tracy comes back. And I hear her come in, and I forgot to mention that our other housemate is a geriatric dog named Bayrock. He's 18 years old. He's a terrier. He's a terrible guard dog. He's more like a piece of furniture. And I hear Tracy come back, and I hear Bayrock's shuffling his nails on the floor. And then I hear Tracy going, "Hey, get out right now. What are you doing? Get out of there." And I'm thinking, what did he do? We don't ever talk to Bayrock like that. And then JP screams down the stairs, "Whitney, come upstairs. There's a man under my mom's bed." And I run up the stairs, and I walk in, and there's chaos. Tracy is in this tiny little bedroom where she's got furniture not arranged appropriately, and you have to, you know, squeeze past, and there's a man who's emerging, a grown human man, coming out from the bed. And what had happened is Tracy had gone in there and been like, "Oh, why is Whitney's shoe under my bed?" And she grabbed onto the shoe, and there was a leg attached to it. And the leg had a body attached to it, and the body was moving. And Tracy's response was, "Get out of there! What are you doing under my bed?" And so I walk up, and she's like swatting him with a magazine. She's a small woman, but she's got this real sternness that I've never seen before. And she's swatting him, "Get out, get out!" And he's going, I'm sorry. Can I get a ride?" And Tracy's like, "Yeah, get in the car." And I'm like, no, 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 no. And I like barricade the door and trap him inside, and Tracy's behind me and JP's standing next to me. And I go, JP, call the cops. And JP's like, no, we're not calling the cops. And I was like, shit, I just failed my test. You want something to eat? And we give him a fizzy water, Spindrift, and like a granola bar. And we're sitting there and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm sorry, this is the first time I've ever done this. And I was like, what's your name? And he goes, I'm Steve. And we're like, damn it, Steve. What are you doing here? Why are you under my mother-in-law's bed? He's like, goes on this whole story that there was, his ex-wife, has this abusive husband, and he was trying to like help her out because he's abusive, and then the guy was being attacking him, and then there's a car chase, and then he gets out of the car and he busts his ankle, and it's this whole story, and I'm sitting there, barricading the door, just like, oh, okay, Steve. And finally, Tracy leans over my shoulder at one point and she goes, you didn't steal anything, did you? And he's like, no, I did not. I looked down, I was like, Steve, you're wearing my shoes. He's like, I'm sorry. And it's sad, But then I remember earlier that day, I could not believe that this had happened, and then I forgot. Earlier that day, at our neighbor's house next door, I had looked out the window when I'm like dancing and eating and having a great time, celebrating, and there was like a whole SWAT team coming in on the house next door. And my neighbor, the person who owns the house, had called me and been like, hey, the cops are looking for somebody. He's on the run, and they think he's hiding out in our house, which was vacant. And I was like, that's terrible, that's terrifying. And it was really frightening, though. You look out, and there was like police with assault rifles. It was just not expected. It was frightening. And then nothing happened, and they went on, and we danced, and I was installing smoke detectors, and now we're here, and I'm looking at this guy. And at a certain point, I go, Steve, you lucked out, because the background, Tracy is a nurse who works at St. Pat's in the behavioral health unit, or clinic, and has a lot of experience caring for people in various situations. She's got experience. JP has an entire career in criminal justice reform, working with people who are incarcerated, doing embodiment work and meditation work and helping people heal. And then you got me, and I'm just a nice guy. And so Steve's got the dream team, and I'm like, damn it, Steve, you picked the right house. This could have gone so poorly for you. Do you understand that we're in Montana? Seriously, Steve? And I finally like stopped barricading. I was like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I'm trapping him in the bedroom that we're like, get out! But I let him come out, and I would offer him a chair, but we're hippie people, and we don't have chairs. We sit on the floor, and he's got this busted ankle, and so he gets down on the ground, and we got his fizzy water, and he's asking, will you give me a ride? And we're trying to figure out what to do. And I'm like, no, Steve, we can't give you a ride. And I'm trying to be like, how do I not get in? Is this the guy that the police were looking for? Is it not? I have no idea. I just don't know if we should get involved. And the three of us are kind of just, me, Tracy, and JP, we're just looking at each other, partially trying to strategize and also being like, is this really happening? And finally, we let him use our phone, call somebody, they don't answer. And so we just, we say, Steve, I'm sorry, we can't help you. You gotta go. You can keep the shoes. And we send him on his way. He's got this busted ankle. And inside, we're sitting there looking at him. He was not a scary man. He was not a scary man. He was a man who was down on his luck. And this is what is that Steve in the audience? And this is a guy who's down on his luck. And I'm just a nice guy, but what I know from being in partnership with JP is how poverty and incarceration and all these things can make some people's life disproportionately miserable. And I'm sitting here looking at this guy, and I'm like, I don't know if his story's real. I don't know. But I certainly don't want to participate in further traumatizing this person. And so we sent him on his way, and we went about our day. And every once in a while, though, we'd look at each other like, did that really happen? And we were like, maybe we should lock our doors, or fix the windows or something. And now it's a bit of a joke. Tracy has a good friend, Wish, who lives on the north side, that some of you maybe know, and Wish will always say, is Steve back? You seen much of Steve? And we're like, no, we haven't seen Steve. But truly, where I end up, nobody thinks this stuff's going to happen, but I think housing in Missoula is raised, the cost of housing for renting is raised like 40% in 6 years or something. It's astronomical. So any one of us could be in Steve's shoes. And the real question, though, is like, we all got these great signs that say, like, we love queers and science is real. What do you do, though, when someone shows up under your mother's bed? Not that queers and science have anything to do with that, but you get what I'm saying. Virtue signaling. What do you do? The question I leave you with. What would you do?
Thank you, Whitney. Our next and final storyteller is Cathy Scholtens. Living her best life amidst the beauty of the Bitterroot Valley, Cathy is an out-of-shape adventure enthusiast. She loves the mountains, waterways, back roads, and most people of Montana. When she first came to Montana in 1976, she saw the Milky Way in all its glory for the first time. The wonder and magnificence of the night sky continues to knock her socks off. Cathy's heart also lies with a ragbag group of friends and family, her family of choice. She remains forever grateful for the craziness, the love, and the laughter they bring into her life. Please welcome Cathy Scholtens.
Missoula Pride. Woo! Well, it was late September, and my best friend Becky and I decided to go to Hope Lake in the Big Hole. We'd never been, and we wanted to go. The map said it was 7 miles. So we start up. The weather had been terrible, but we start. We have a canine companion, Katie, the wonder dog. And she's with us. She's a 3-year-old golden retriever, and she's up for anything. So we start up, and about the 30th switchback, we realize, oh shit. Yeah, it's 7 miles, but it's 6 miles straight up to the Continental Divide, over the top and down another mile. But we're up for it. We're best friends. I'd met Becky about 7 years before that, and she was fantastic. She was funny, she was smart, and we became best friends immediately. She was a tomboy. She wasn't into shopping and makeup and pedicures. She was into fishing and camping and hiking, and so was I, so it was perfect. We had a lot of fun. She was also the kindest person I'd ever met. As a matter of fact, when we would go to Missoula, and I would not drive, every stoplight with a guy with a cardboard sign, she'd go, Cathy, give that guy $10. Hey, Cathy, you got $20? Give that girl $20. Fuck, it's all coming out of my wallet. So I started to drive. Saved myself a lot of money over time. So we're hiking, and we're talking like best friends do. But we're not talking about what we're supposed to be talking about. Because, yeah, we were best friends. But in the past, month or so, our relationship had kind of shifted a little bit. Okay, a lot, all right? Because we had become lovers. They don't call her Bad Becky for nothing. And we didn't know what to do with that, okay, because there was a lot of red flags, a lot of problems. Now, Becky was gung-ho. She was ready to call up U-Haul, get the trailer, go, live with me the rest of my life. Come be with me. But me, I'm like, oh, man, there's like way too much stuff going on here. There's red flags. And let me tell you what they were, okay? 1, we were both in relationships already. I know. It wasn't fair to them, and we felt pretty crappy about that. And we had to come clean. 2, Becky was a straight girl. All of you lesbians out there, you know what trouble straight girls are they not? They've listened to every Katy Perry song. They just want to kiss a girl, and they'll kiss you, but then they'll break your hearts. And I was well aware of that. But the biggest problem was me, because I am a relationship loser, okay? Every relationship I'd ever been in, I left. I couldn't stay. I'd think I was in love, and pretty soon, I was gone. I could not keep a relationship going. And I knew that. And I didn't want to break her heart. I didn't want to lose her friendship. And so we needed to talk about this stuff. But hell no, we're not going to talk about it because that would make too much sense. We're just going to get up to the top and go to this lake. So we're making promises to God, and we finally get up there. And we're on the top of the Continental Divide. And now, on the Continental Divide, you guys, you can see forever. Okay? It is awesome. I recommend it. Except that what we saw that late September day was snowstorms, thunderstorms, snowstorms, and to the west, the sun was going down. And we knew we're not making the lake. We can't make it. Why? Because we are responsible hikers. We know better. We know that we can't be on that mountain in the dark in late September with snow all around us. So we, like responsible people, say, okay, we're going to not make the lake, we'll go down. But let's look at this for a minute. And it's beautiful. It's fantastic. And we see this hawk coming up the North Ridge. And she's floating on those drafts and just floating and floating. And pretty soon, she's right here. She's right above us. If I had stood on my tiptoes, I could have touched her. Now, I'm not no hoogity-boogity, new age, woo-woo, mystical girl. I'm not. Look at me. Oh, my God. Okay? Right? No braids, nothing. But something magical happened with that hawk. She's right there. It's a National Geographic moment, and she is speaking to me. And I'm like this. And she's talking to me, and I'm hearing crazy stuff, and I look at Becky to ask her if she's hearing the same crazy bullshit I'm hearing. And just then, that hawk goes and goes over the side of that mountain towards Hope Lake. The message: go to the lake. I don't know. We're like, duh. So we like, what do you got in your pack? What do you got? Well, I had a water pump, pretty good. I had some matches. I had a space blanket. That's useless. I'll let you know that. It melts when embers hit it. And I had a pound of trail mix that I was already sick of. Now, Becky, being amazing, had an 8mm Glock on her hip, okay? So butch. And she had a fishing pole and some worms, and that's about it, right? So what we didn't have was a tent, sleeping bags, warm coats, hats, gloves, food, everything you need. So we decided to go anyways, because the hawk said to go. So we go. We go over the side down to Hope Lake. And by the time we get there, it's dark. But Becky starts fishing right away. Why? Because Katie, the wonder dog, doesn't eat trail mix. So she's got to catch some fish. And I'm over there trying to start a fire because I know, goddamn, we're going to die if I don't get a fire going. When I was a kid, I was a pyromaniac. I could start anything on fire, and did, and but I couldn't get anything going because it'd been raining for days. I couldn't find anything dry. Nothing was working. I'm starting to freak. And I look over at Becky, and every time she catches a fish and that bobber goes down, Katie, the wonder dog, goes, "Oh, fun, yay!" and jumps in the water and goes for the bobber. And the fish would be gone. So both of us are striking out, and I'm starting to freak. I'm like, "Oh, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die." Stupid hawk. So pretty soon here comes Becky, and she's managed to wrangle a few fish out of Katie's grasp, and she has a couple fish, and she says, "What's going on?" And I go, "Oh man, I can't start this, I don't have anything dry." And she goes, "Oh, I got something for you." And she reaches in her jacket and pulls out a bunch of love letters that she'd hidden there that I had written to her over the past month. Now these love letters, of course we read them out loud because we're gay girls, and we had to share the moment, and they're full of like how I think she's fantastic, and she's adorable, and I am madly in love with her, and what a loser I am, and how I'm going to screw the whole thing up, and I'm going to mess it up, and I can't do relationships, and what are we going to do? Well, she's reading them, and she's just wadding them up, shaking her head, putting them in, and we finally get a fire going. We get a good fire going, and she's got the fish on a rock for Katie cooking, and we're sitting there, and she says, "Look at that smoke, Scholtens. Look at it going up. It's just going up. That's from your letters. All that angst and I can't do it, I'm horrible, blah, blah, blah. All of that, up in smoke. There it goes. It's gone." And I said, "Oh yeah? Well, what about all the love in those letters, baby?" And she said, "Oh, the love. The love goes higher. The love goes up to the universe. And the universe is listening, and the universe has us in her arms." I'm like, "Whoa, okay, well, okay." Whatever, Becky. And so we spend the night freezing our ass off, trying to be with the fire, and, following the fire, and talking. We start talking. And we really are mixing it up, trying to figure things out. But every once in a while, Katie, the wonder dog, keeps things really interesting by looking off into the dark woods and growling a growl that I've never heard any dog growl, let alone a golden retriever, okay? And I would shit my pants. I'd be like, "Ah!" Really maintaining the butch aspect. And Becky, though, would whip that Glock off into this commando mode, and she's ready to shoot the shit up at anything that's gonna bother us. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in love with this girl." So we spend the night talking, freezing. And come the early light of dawn, when we can finally see something, we see, here comes the snow, and it's coming fast and heavy and hard. And we're like, we got to get the hell out of here. So we pack up our stuff, and we start heading up to the divide. And I stop, and I take one last look at that little campsite, and I think, what the hell did we just do here? What did we do? Well, what we did was we did something really stupid and really dangerous. But what we did was we trusted each other, and we worked together, and we made it happen. We survived the night with nothing. And was that much different than what Becky was asking me to do with her? To lean out of my comfort zone, to believe in us, to trust her, to trust myself, and to have a life together. And I figured, if I listened to a goddamn bird I'd never met before, I could surely listen to my best friend. So up at the top of the divide, I told her, I took her hand, so romantic, and I said, "Yes, yes, yes." And we were on cloud 9. We ran down that mountain. Snow, no snow. We just ran down. We didn't even stop at the camper because we had to find a payphone. We had to call the people who needed to know. So we jump in the truck and we drive to Wisdom, Montana. And we get on the payphone at Letty's and we call home, what used to be home, and we both say, "We're not coming back. We're not coming back." Because home then was in my Becky's arms, and that's where I wanted to be. You guys, this September, it'll be 26 years ago. I'm still madly in love with her, and she's still my best friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Also, thank you, Becky. Big thanks again to all of you for coming out and supporting live storytelling in Missoula. Huge thanks again to our amazing ASL interpreters, Bonnie Cure-Ian and Denise May.
And thank you to our stewardship sponsor, the University of Montana Summer Office. Thank you to our story sponsors, Axis Physical Therapy and Hindu Hillbilly. Thank you to our accessibility sponsor, Blackfoot Communications.
I have one line. Oh, thank you for being here tonight to support live storytelling and to support your community. Oh, and here she comes. Pascaline. Pascaline. Oh, sure.
Thank you to Tell Us Something Executive Director Mark Moss. Thank you most of all to our storytellers. Katie Condon, Reid Reimers, Sarah Black, Kaegan Bonstein, Devin Carpenter, Pascaline Piquard, Whitney Peper, and Cathy Scholtens.
We want to thank all of you for coming out tonight to support Tell Us Something in Missoula Pride. We still have a ton of events coming up the rest of the weekend.